Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the mashup, the partnership, the glow up of JustUs, Junkie, and Legaleaze. Please, I guess I'm doing this so you would technically be to my left because I'm turning this way. My good friend and sister, attorney April Preyar, and then I am Natasha Robinson. We are mighty glad that you all are here. If you would take a moment, if you can see us and hear us or read us in closed caption, please take a moment to click like and click share. Click like and click share. I want you to share this in the same fervor and frequency as these lies that have been shared about what the quote unquote Purge Act is and is not. Because we're going to be giving some good information, some good free information from two licensed, seasoned attorneys, Black women, believe Black women. And so we're coming on because we love our communities and we love the truth. So April and myself, we are going to be sharing information about this so-called Purge Act. If you will come on in the comments and please tell us your name and where you're from so that we can shout you out. If you have any questions, we will be sure to put that on the screen for everyone to see. I'm going to turn it over to Attorney April Preyar. Thank you all so much for being here.
Thank you. This is outstanding. So I want to welcome those who are unfamiliar with me because I'm on your platform, or are unfamiliar with you because you're on my platform, because we are streaming live to both places. So Natasha and I actually both were sworn into the bar the same day. We both became assistant public defenders the same day. And then we both became active practicing criminal defense attorneys for many years. And that was some 22 years ago. And since that time, our paths have diverged somewhat, and then they have come back together. Natasha went on to teach first in high school, teaching high school students, teaching them law. And then she went on to teach law in a college setting. I have been a practicing attorney the entire time, but 3 years ago launched my own platform where I started breaking down the law and fancy legal jargon in a way that lay people could understand. I started doing Facebook videos. I developed a board game that you'll hear more about. And then Natasha also has a similar platform, but we have very different styles. But our goal is the same: to make law accessible. Like she always says, law is not just for lawyers, but to make law accessible to everyone, to have it explained to you in a way that you understand, and not in fancy Latin terms that keep all of us at arm's length. Because last time I checked, nobody speaks Latin anymore. So we want to welcome you onto this platform, and we want to do the same thing with the Safety Act that she and I do daily on our separate platforms in terms of breaking specifically criminal law down, and that the two of us also both do on Court TV. So welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. And as we said, if you are here live or later, please put in the comments your name and where you are from. Also, we are streaming on Facebook, we are streaming on YouTube, and we are streaming on LinkedIn. So please visit any one of those platforms. Please click like and share, so that if you are watching live or whether you're watching later, put your questions and your comments in the chat and we will see them and we will answer them in the order that they are coming. So, April, let's get to it. What is it that you wish to address first?
Well, I think people above all need to understand that this panic, that this fear mongering is intentional. It was very well planned. And so what am I talking about? So there's been a meme that I first started seeing last Friday. I think that's when it started circulating because people started sending it to me in my inbox and text messaging me. At the time I was busy. I'm like, I don't have time to look at this. And then finally got to the point, I got it so many times, I had to stop what I was doing and spend all day Friday just really doing a deep dive into this act. So the Safety Act is some legislation that was passed a little over a year ago, and it is extensive, comprehensive criminal justice reform in Illinois. And a small part of that act is the Pretrial Fairness Act, which eliminates cash bond. And what I think people fail to understand is that cash bond punishes poor people. And so what are we seeing as a result of the passage of this act and the upcoming election? Well, the Republicans got together and they created a very well-funded, very well thought out propaganda campaign. Yes, a campaign of lies to create fear and panic, mostly amongst their own voters, so that they would not vote for the current governor and they would vote for Darren Bailey, who is running for governor. But what has happened as a result is that Black people are also, who tend to be normally Democrats, are also panicking and believing that on January 1st, the doors of Cook County Jail will be kicked open and all the murders will descend on their neighborhoods. And that's simply not factual. So that's where I want to start. Cash bail punishes poor people, and the Republicans are playing on that, playing on your fears, and want you to believe that we must have cash bail in place to keep these poor Black criminals in check.
Yeah, I completely agree. We're going to show you some of the images that have been circulating throughout these internets. And it, quite frankly, has occupied, I would say, 99.9% of our time this week. We have talked more this week than we have probably talked in our entire lives because, to be quite honest, the sharing of misinformation and disinformation, while it is not surprising, it still amazes me that we can get one particular phrase and use that to the point where our oppressive systems and persons don't have to do their job anymore because we're doing it for them. And so information is power, but you know what is even more powerful is correct information. So we're going to bring that to you through a factual and legal perspective. If you are watching this live or later, please click like and share. This is one of the first things that you have probably seen is this meme that talks about the non-detainable offenses beginning January 1st, 2023. All of anybody who's going to be in Cook County Jail is going to be chewing through steel in order to get released at 12:01 a.m. And so the way that the propaganda is coming is that you will have to get steel closures on your windows. You're going to have to hide your kids, hide your wife, all of this fear, when in actuality, it is false. Okay, and so we're going to walk through. The reason why it is called the Purge law is because you have a Republican candidate who has used mainstream media through the way of the movie called The Purge to use that as a clickbait and to use that as a soundbite. And so when you hear about the Purge law, that's not what it's called. It is called the Pretrial Fairness Act, which is an act within the Safety Act. Okay, so if you look on the left, we have the meme, which April so aptly put on it, fake news. Okay, because that's what it is. It is a fear and a scare tactic to have you believe that these persons who are accused, not convicted, accused of these particular crimes are going to all of a sudden going to be released in mass into our communities, threatening our public safety. Whereas April said earlier, this act was created to prevent the oppression and the systemic and systematic racism and classism of those who could not afford bond. Okay, in Illinois, you have three types of bonds. You have an I bond, which means you're released on your own recognizance or identity. You have a D bond, which means you are posting 10% of the original bond. So if your bond is 10,000 D, you would need 1,000 to get out. If your bond is 500,000 D, you would need 50,000. There's that math again, 50,000 to get out, and so on and so forth. And so by statute, there are certain things that the prosecution and the defense can discuss with the judge in order for your bond to be set. The Pretrial Act, I want y'all to stop using purge law. It is called the Pretrial Fairness Act. It is now saying that there are different factors to be considered when setting bond, but you do not have to post or pay cash bond. So just think about that for a minute, but because it's like, oh my God, everything is gonna, no, it's dear heart, that's not going to happen. It's not going to happen.
So I think the problem is that most people have no clue about how the current system works, unless they have had unless they've been through the system themselves or had a loved one, a close loved one who they went to court with. And even then, a lot of stuff flies over people's heads. So if you get arrested right now, before January 1st, for any crime, say it's a theft from Walgreens. I always love to say, you stole some toothpaste from Walgreens. You stole some diapers from Walgreens. Whatever, you get arrested right now. You will be taken before a judge within 48 hours for a bond hearing. At the bond hearing, the prosecutor will be there, the defense attorney will be there, the judge will be there, and you will be present there, standing next to your attorney, or maybe on Zoom these days. But anyway, you'll be there. And during that hearing goes really fast. They're usually less than 5 minutes per defendant. And during that time, the judge isn't going to decide whether you're guilty or not. He's not going to hang you by your toenails in the parking lot. He's not going to throw you in jail and throw away the key. All that judge, he or she is hearing is from the prosecutor is going to hear your criminal background if you have one. How many times have you been arrested? How many times have you missed court? And in this instance, what are the facts they are alleging? What did they say you did? How much did that Walgreens toothpaste cost that you stole? Which Walgreens did you steal it from? Who saw you steal it? Who are the witnesses? The judge is just going to hear the bare bones. And on the flip side, from your attorney, that judge will hear how old you are. Do you live with your mom? How far did you get in school? Do you have any military in your background? What do you do for a living? Like, what are you up to as a person? And then the third thing that they will hear is a risk assessment that is typed up by a pretrial services officer. And that will say, what is your likelihood of reoffending? And what is your likelihood of blowing off court and being in the wind if you are released? So in any type of case, the theft from the Walgreens or murder of 25 people, the judge is going to hear those same facts today. That's how the system works today. And then the judge decides how much money you would have to pay, if any, in order to be released. If money isn't paid, maybe they'll put you on electronic monitoring, which is that bracelet on your leg. And maybe you have to pay money and be on electronic monitoring. Maybe you'll be held in jail because your family can't pay the bond. And that's what Natasha and I were speaking of. Come January 1st, same thing, you are arrested. Again, if it's a violent crime, you will again have that same hearing that I described within 48 hours. The thing that is taken out of it is your ability to pay, meaning the rich killer is not going to walk while the poor thief sits behind bars. That's what's going to stop. But the risk assessment will be the same. The factors that the judge weighs will be the same. And they're looking at two things. Are you going to skip out on bail? Are you going to skip out if they release you? Are you never going to come back to court? Are you a flight risk? And then number two, are you a risk to a specific person? Or are you a risk to the community as a whole? The judge will decide. And what doesn't get taken away January 1st is the judge's discretion. The judge still has the ability to detain you. The judge still has the ability to hold you behind bars, to hold you on the bracelet, to give you a curfew, to make sure that people supervise your release or that you're not released at all. That does not change.
So I want to show one graphic so that we know that there are a myriad of ways in which people learn. People learn differently, different ways. My mother is one of them type of people. You could talk all day long. I need to see it. And so this is for you, mommy. This is what's called the Pretrial Fairness Act. I'm going to enlarge it so you can see it better, but we are still here. Well, that's not what I wanted to do. Hold on 1 minute. Let me go back. This is what I want to do. Here we go. All right. So This is an overview of the Pretrial Fairness Act. Everything that April and I are referring to are in this graphic. So the first thing that you need to realize is that the Illinois legislature passed this act in January 2021. Okay, this was not passed in the middle of the night under cloud of suspicion and people walking around caped, trying to engage in, I think some language is a lame duck session. No, this was very much active. This was passed in January 2021. The first thing that is going to change is that now judges at the bond hearing that April was talking about will consider the type of charge that the accused is facing, the risk of willful flight, and the danger to a specific person in the community. That is for new cases. Okay, those are the bond hearings. And then what happens is that based upon those three factors, then there is a determination as to whether that person is going to be detained or whether that person is going to be released. Now, one of the things that I also have heard, and I will address this to Attorney April, is tell me about this thing about trespassing, where folks is you on my lawn and you in my house, and where does that fall into this particular discussion? Because that's one of the talking points of this, where we've had law enforcement say, well, I can't arrest trespassers anymore. I can only give them a citation. And then they just have to wait around and break the law even more. What does that look like?
Yeah, so it all started exactly like you said. There was some sheriff or some officer downstate who got on TV all despondent saying he can't arrest trespassers anymore. First of all, trespass is not a very common crime. Trespass is not a very crime. But I think what's happening is people are conflating trespassers with squatters, with burglars, with home invaders. Like these are all totally different categories. So trespass normally happens where you own a business, maybe somebody's a pest, maybe they are just kind of hanging around, maybe they're being disorderly in your establishment, and you say, hey, beat it. And then 2 hours later, they come back. Okay, look, I've told you verbally to leave. Or there's a sign up saying that people can't be in a specific area. Like I actually violated that as a youth. Went into an area and I actually got busted for trespassing. So there are big signs saying you can't be here. That's trespassing. Trespassing is not you walk into your house and there's an armed robber there. That is a home invasion. Yeah. They are not the same. I had a caller the other day when I was on a radio show, all in arms because he had squatters in one of his apartment buildings, and he was just despondent because, oh my God, I can't have the trespassers removed. Sir, that's a civil matter. These are squatters who are living in your property. The police wouldn't remove them anyway. You have to go to civil housing court for that. So for trespassing, now what has changed is instead of putting that person in cuffs, throwing them in a car, taking them in front of that bond hearing in 48 hours, they can be given a ticket and told to leave that property. But remember, the cop's discretion doesn't go away. So if the person seems violent, if they seem aggressive, if they are harassing people, if they're posing a physical threat, of course the officer can still arrest them. So I don't really understand. I had somebody post on my page, can you please talk about trespass? I was like, I don't really get why this is a thing, other than it's a Republican talking point that's used to scare you. But trespassers in general are not violent. They are just pests who are told to, hey, leave this location. You can't be here for whatever reason, and the person might come back. It's not they come back armed, because then that would be a different charge. It's not that they come back violent, because that would be a different charge. It physically means that there's a sign or somebody gave them a verbal warning to leave and they came back. And now police can still come hand them a ticket. Hey, beat it. Take a walk around the block. She or he doesn't want you here. And I don't know why this is such a big deal, because this is such a small crime.
Yeah. And add to the fact that when we're talking about groups and classifications of crime, there are two big groups. You have misdemeanors and felonies. Felonies are the more considerably serious offenses, like murder, like kidnapping, sexual assault. Those are more, those are the type of offenses where you can face considerably a heftier punishment and accountability than the trespassing, than taking a loaf of bread, than, holding a little weed on you, depending on the weight. Those are things that are considered to be misdemeanors. And so there's one of the things that I want to share with you all as it relates to all of these crimes that were on the meme. So you had two columns. You had aggravated battery, DUI, aggravated fleeing, which is really called aggravated fleeing and eluding. You have arson, burglary, drug-induced homicide, second-degree murder, kidnap, all the things that would have you shaking in your little citizen boots. And so it is to enact fear. And so what it said was Illinois non-detainable offenses. Well, April and I are big on going to primary sources, which if you paid any attention in your schools, instead of learning about what someone else said, go to what is said and then make your analysis from there. So if you look at this chart, you will see 4 columns. The first is the name of the crime. The second is where in the Illinois statute. ILCS stands for Illinois Compiled Statutes. It is akin to if someone says in church, look up Isaiah 16:9, and you would pull out, the sacred text, and that is like a citation. It's the same way. You would pull out the statute book if that's what you wanted to do, or if you wanted to go online, you could look this up. The felony classes is what is a serious punishment for anybody who is accused of that if they plead guilty or if they are found guilty. And then in the last column is it probationable? Now, some of the information on the meme is just outright a lie. Now, I know for some of us, when we were growing up, you had Big Mama and Nana and Didder saying, well, don't say lies, say untrue, say fabrication. I'm 48. It's a lie.
Say story.
yeah, it's a story. This is not a story. Okay. This is a lie. Okay. And so some of these offenses that are on this meme are outright lies. Let me prove my point. On this meme that we talked about, where it said that arson is probationable, look and you will see that arson under no circumstance is ever probationable. Not because April says it, not because I said, but because the statute, the lawmakers say you can never ever get probation on arson. Okay. Another example is I'm trying to see where it is that for those offenses where probation is on the table, in that last column, it says yes, but there's always a but in law, especially criminal law. It depends. So what happens is that if you are charged with intimidation, kidnapping, robbery, second-degree murder, whatever it is probation an option? Absolutely. Will you get it automatically? Absolutely not. Okay, because you have that tool, which April referred to, which is called discretion. Lawmakers do not take away discretion on behalf of law enforcement. They do not take away discretion on behalf of prosecutors. They do not take away discretion on behalf of judges. And so when you have all of this fear mongering and people spreading lies quicker than they spread the truth, you have it that on January 1st, Illinois is going to be wilding out. Everybody's just going to be doing all types of things. And that is far from the truth. If you seriously believe that police officers are going to just sit and watch different alleged crimes occur and they're going to do nothing, then we need to have a private conversation about why you have that delusion, because that is in fact a delusion. The other thing that has been shared in social media and with reels and reshares and videos is this fact that only those who benefit from the passage of this crime had something to do with it. Like there were no other stakeholders that were there when this law was argued, when it was created, when it was passed. April, is that true?
Yeah, that's exactly. I'm glad you did that segue. So absolutely not. So conversation and debate on this bill has been going on at least 4 years, closer to 5 years. And so for people to believe that this happened like a week ago under the cover of darkness is asinine. And so there actually was a task force created with 34 individuals. Get this, 26 of the 34 were law enforcement. I'm gonna say that again: law enforcement, prosecutors, and the judiciary. So this task force issued a report in 2020. Why is that important? And only one person there was a defense attorney. So everything that is in this bill that then became an act that will become law on January 1st was crafted by who? 26 individuals who were law enforcement, judiciary, and who did I forget? Prosecutors.
Yes.
So now, who is backpedaling in the media? Prosecutors and law enforcement. But if you look at the names on here, you have U.S. Supreme Court justices. You have Tom Dart, who runs the entire Cook County Sheriff's Department. You have Tim Evans, who is the chief judge. And so for people to think that all of these 34 people and then all the legislators who voted this into law have all lost their minds, that they have no interest in having a safe Illinois, and that they live in a bubble somehow that is free of crime is incredulous. And so it is really frustrating for me in particular to see how many Black people are eating this up without any critical thinking coming into play. I mean, smart people who are just eating, oh my God, the purge is coming. January 1st is over. I'm leaving Chicago. I'm leaving the state. You have lost your cotton picking mind. It doesn't make any sense for us to just buy this bait, line, and sinker when you clearly have, and get this, so this is just the task force. That doesn't even take into account the numerous experts who came under oath and testified, because before they pass any bill, before they think about legislation, they want to get the facts. They don't have boots on the ground. They're not in the courtroom. They're not in the streets. So they want to talk to law enforcement. They want to talk to prosecutors. How is this going to play out in the courtroom? So they had experts come in. And so for you all to believe what is the screaming woman on the TV ad, for you to believe anything that Darren Bailey and his cronies say is unbelievable. And anything from a network called WFCN, which none of us had ever heard of before last Friday, but now you believe in that over CNN, ABC, WGN, NBC, who you listen to on a regular, is ridiculous. And I'm calling everybody out for not using their critical thinking, for simply believing some nonsense that you saw on Facebook, because this is a well thought out, this bill was very well thought out. It's beautifully crafted. And remember, this is only one very small part of a bill that is going to do a lot of good.
Now, first of all, I thank you so much for putting that into ways we can understand, because it seems like something that is true is under the rug, but those things that cause fervor and frenzy and what have you, it spreads like a virus. It spreads like wildfire. Neither April or I are saying not to be concerned with how you have the substance of the law and then you have procedure. Of course, there are going to be things in which you're like, okay, we hadn't quite thought about that. Let's work that out, or what have you. Is this going to be the end all be all of crime? Absolutely not. But what it is it is a comprehensive number of steps to do what no other state in the country is doing, which is recognizing the systemic and the systematic ways in which persons are punished, even though they are presumed innocent. For example, both April and I have had clients who have been held in custody on a bond that they could not afford. Now, that's one thing, but where it becomes so egregious and frustrating is when you have someone who is presumed innocent sitting in jail longer than the possible punishment they face. So if you are facing, let's say, 364 days in jail, but the time you have been incarcerated for a crime that has not been proven is 3 years, then that is unacceptable. It's absolutely unacceptable. And this was one of the ways in which the legislator and all of the persons that April referred to came together. They didn't just say, all right, let's create this law. It was tons and tons of data, tons and tons of reports, of testimonials. If you look at, if you go to prisonpolicy.org, they have an excellent source of information where they are providing tables and data and spreadsheets that talks about how many people, for example, in this country alone, you have almost 500,000 people who are being held in custody, not because they pled guilty, not because they're being targeted, but because they can't pay a particular bond. So you have almost 500,000 people who are in jails waiting to either plead guilty or to be found guilty or to go to trial and say, I ain't done none of this.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and 75% of those people are there on nonviolent offenses. That's right. The kicker.
Yeah.
So we both had clients who sat in jail, not just sat in jail, for a weed case.
Yes.
For a weed case who couldn't find out. Okay, this is before they changed the law in Illinois and recreational marijuana was legal and all the white billionaires started coming in to make even millions more off of what Black folks were being imprisoned for. But yes, we've had clients sit in jail on a little bit of weed. I always tell the story. I started off as a public defender on the misdemeanor call at 111th Street, and we had a huge prostitution call. That's back when prostitutes were not considered sex trafficking or child trafficking victims. They were offenders. And routinely, they would get $100, $200 bonds. A month later, I would see the same women in custody like, babe, why are you still here? Oh, well, because I couldn't pay that $100 bond. Everybody in my community could not pool our money to pay that $100 bond. I saw the same thing for people who stole one little gadget out of Home Depot. Very minor crimes. Whereas I've also had clients who were charged with attempt murder who with no problem paid a $15,000, $20,000 bond and walked out the door. So he's out fighting his case, but she's in because she can't pay $100. If you don't see the disparity in that, there's something wrong with you. So all this bill does is even the playing field. It says no matter your financial background, no matter your income, for these nonviolent offenses, we're going to trust you to return to court. Why? Because the studies show that whether you pay that $1 million bond or you pay no bond at all, people generally show up to court because they know that if they don't show up to court, you got a whole lot of more problems. Man, if I don't go to court, then they're going to come looking for me. They're going to drag me out of my job. I'm going to miss more time off of work. It's just easier to fall in line with the honor system and go until the case is resolved, however it is resolved.
Yeah. And to build on that, to be clear, the only purpose of bond is to guarantee someone's appearance in court. It is not any indication or indictment of guilt because you are already presumed innocent under these countries' laws. So bond, the higher the bond doesn't automatically mean, okay, this person must be guilty because they have a high bond. No, there are certain statutory things that the judges had to consider. And now, as April said, they are leveling the playing field. So the only things that are to be considered is a type of crime, whether you're going to be a flight risk, and then they're going to be using the risk assessments to determine, among other things, are you going to be a threat to a person or to other people? There are ways also, if you are released on pretrial, that there are ways of snatching your ass back. Okay, where if you get out and you say, you know what, 'Tis the season to be jolly, and you follow the line all around the world trying to commit other crimes. Let me tell you, you're not going to get a citation, honey. You are going to get a straight to jail card. That's what you're going to get, because that's where it is that you are going to go. And so we are trying to not necessarily convince, but to definitely provide information for you to engage in critical thinking. Don't just take our word for it. We didn't have this information downloaded into us and we woke up and started to activate it. This act, the Safety Act, of which the Pretrial Fairness Act is a part, is at least 750 pages. Now, I think I have it on good authority that don't nobody have time to be reading all of that, okay? But that discusses, one, how comprehensive this act is, and then secondly, for those who are not going to read all of that, take it upon yourself to vet and to verify your sources. The way that this meme was being spread and shared by a station that a lot of us had never heard of, think about it. All of a sudden, that this station that we've never heard of, well, when we're looking at it, what are the intentions of the persons who are trying to put this information out? Who are these people? There is probably very little way in which a lot of persons say, you know what? I see this, but let me check it. I saw one time that particular meme had, at the time I looked, 400 shares in less than 10 hours. So what happens? What happens is that ignorance, and I don't mean stupidity, I mean ignorance, not knowing the law or what is the truth, is multiplied exponentially. And once you have that type of momentum, it is very hard to come in and say, that's not true, especially when you have people that are saying it is. April and myself have received all types of messages from people who have keyboard courage. And they're just saying all this type of foolishness. You ain't shit, your mama ain't shit, just all this type of stuff. And it's like, but when you finish trying to get bad on the internet, go back and read what the law says. And for those who may not be able to have access to the law, for those who may have the language of understanding, but they're like, I don't know what these words mean specifically as it relates to legal significance. This is why we are having this forum, is to be able to have this conversation. Now, of course, neither one of us can talk about this 750 page plus legislation in how long we've been on here? Almost 40 minutes. Mm-hmm. That's not going to happen. What is going to happen is that April and myself, we are going to come back and we are going to focus specifically on different parts of this legislation so that you are able to understand, particularly for those that live in Illinois, what is coming, what is already existing, and how this impacts you. Now, if you live in another country, another state, you may be watching because you may have been pulled into this belief that the Illinois is disintegrating. Okay, it's just going to be the places to go. Don't even drive through Illinois. Just go around through the Great Lakes and come on back down the Mississippi. We don't want that. We want you to be better informed. We want to make sure that not only are you informed by learning, but that you are informed by teaching, by sharing this information. You don't have to accuse anyone or get into it with anybody because people are going to believe what they're going to believe. But at least believe it based upon the truth that we are showing you in the act and through our experience.
Yeah, so I wanted to talk about the dangers of this propaganda. So I had a friend ask me, actually a lawyer asked me, like, basically, like, what's in it for me? Because I'm on a personal crusade to combat this information. And the person asked me, like, basically, what do I get out of it? I said, well, I think that there are several consequences that are about to happen in rapid succession in the next couple of months. So personally, I like my peace, and I think that's what's going to happen right now as I'm receiving this meme over and over. I think as we get closer to January 1st, everybody in every county jail is going to be blowing up lawyers' phones saying, when am I getting out? whether they're charged with car theft or whether they charged with shooting 2 people. They're going to be saying, when am I getting out? Because I heard what had happened is they changed the law and I'm going home. And on their behalf, their mothers and grandmothers are going to start calling as well. That's on one end. The other end is all the Karens who call the police on us for bird watching and barbecuing in the park are suddenly going to get real brazen because they're also concealed carry holders. And I think that now every little brown boy they see, I mean, it's already happening with everybody being labeled a carjacker, whether they are or not. Every little brown boy they see, every brown adult they see, every Black adult they see is suddenly going to be even more of a threat because we just heard all the criminals are coming. So I think that there are very dire consequences that are not being discussed, that are definitely coming down the pike, aside from the possibility of this terrible man ending up as the governor, because I can't even get into the political debate because I'm far more concerned about what's going to happen in real time with the people in my actual physical space.
Yeah. I completely agree. And one of the concerns that I have heard from persons is, okay, so we hear you with the new cases, we hear you with those that are already convicted, this don't even apply. But what about people who are being held currently? What's going to happen to them? And so one of the things that I want to completely have us understand, and it be stressed to us, is that it is not just a door that is going to be released or going to be open on, so here in Chicago, 26 in California. That's not going to happen. You also have a tool, and when I say you, I really mean the prosecutor's office. Here in Illinois, they are Cook County State's attorneys. They are able to not only have a risk assessment, but they are ready, trust me, ready to have petitions that are going to be filed, where those petitions are going to state that these persons, whoever they are, they pose flight risk, they have a particular alleged crime, and they may pose a danger or hazard to X, Y, and Z. So please understand, this is not a situation where you just have law enforcement, prosecutors, judges, just literally or figuratively laying on the ground with their hands up, talking about we are now bound by the law. Please understand that the reason why a lot of grassroots movements have occurred is because people did not follow the law. So now all of a sudden, everybody's going to be law abiding. All of a sudden, everybody who is anybody is now going to say, well, my hands are tied. I'm just a police officer. Do not believe that. Okay. We showed you the graphic that showed the at least 28 people who came together to review the data and to create this law. And guess who was on there? Sheriffs, police officers, prosecutors, judges, justices, which are on appellate courts, and a defense attorney. Okay. Also, pre-trial officers. You had an entire list of people who sat down with legislators and said, this is what we recommend, this is what we don't recommend. And then the law, now that it is a law, had to be voted upon. And guess what? It also received bipartisan support. So these are just some of the things that we want you to consider, that we want you to know. Now, are you going to go out and all of a sudden convince everybody? No, you're not. Because you have, I would say, media sources like Baller Alert, and it's another one where they are news media for many people. But what we want you to know is when you see something, investigate it, check it out, do your own reading, go to verifiable sources or people that you trust, like April and myself. Clearly, we're here because we're here on the internet, okay, in the middle of the day on a Friday, when both April and myself would be doing a lot of other things. But because of the care and concern that we have for you, for our different communities, because of the misinformation and disinformation that has been shared widely and rapidly and wrongly, we want to come on to be able to address this and understand that this is not a one-time thing. We are going to be coming on, I think, maybe one other time this month to talk about a different section of the act. The other thing that I want you to know is that even though this is called the Safety, Accountability, Fairness, and Equity Today Act, that's what safety is. It's an acronym. Understand that when you're talking about the riddance or the abolition of cash bond, you're talking about the Pretrial Fairness Act. Okay? I don't want y'all coming over to me talking about the Purge Act. Okay? Because we've already said in short, will there be a purge law in Illinois? The short answer is no, it's not. Okay? But when you're talking about it, Pretrial Fairness Act is not going to get as many shares or hashtag. But the Purge will. It's not a sexy title. We didn't name it. Okay? However, this is what it is called. All right? When you say the Purge law, you are inadvertently saying you believe that's what it is, because that's what you're calling it. And so what we're asking is that you realize is that language has power. Okay? And so again, you can come to April's website. I'm going to put it up here so that you can see it, as well as my own. You have JustUsJunkie.store. If you go there, you will have, and I forgot to go in the kitchen and get my game because great people to play with.
And I don't have any next to me for the first time.
Yeah,
ever.
I'm like, I know where it is. It's right there in the kitchen. But you have the board game that April has created, as they say in the country, from scratch. She came through and she created this beautiful game that addresses the truths and the illusions of the criminal system. It is beyond getting rave reviews. This is a person who is pretty much on every network that exists except HGTV. I've never seen her on HGTV, but everywhere else, she is doing amazing things. So go to her website so that you are able to follow her. She's on all of the places in terms of social media. She's on Facebook. She's on Instagram. She is on TikTok. If you are on Instagram or TikTok, you see these different 60-second informational videos that talks about your rights under the law, what you should do, what you shouldn't do, and things like that. So this is one person, one of many, because let me be clear also, Black women attorneys, although we make up a very, very, very small percentage, we are out here. We are the norm and not the exception. Okay? If you want to connect with me through Legaleaze, please, you can go anywhere, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, and type in Legaleaze, please. It's with a Z, because sometimes information is better digested when you are in times of peace and not in times of chaos. And so it should not have to take you to be arrested, to be charged, to be a victim, to be a witness to a crime when you are learning in real time about the law. Take time to be able to understand what the law says, what it doesn't say. We equip you with the tools that are necessary for you to, not only be a student, but to also be a teacher. Okay, this is where community comes in. It's not about just holding information in the reservoir, but it is also the sharing, the flow of information, correct information. And so we want to make sure that you are getting just that you are getting the type of information that is informative, that is digestive, where you can take it in, and also where you can share it. Okay, so April, what else do you want to share?
I want to close with two things that have come up. So one, people are concerned, or there has been this myth promulgated that now, because it's 48 hours for this detention hearing to happen, that state's attorneys will not have enough time to get their ducks in a row. They will not have enough time to get their information to be able to present at a detention hearing. I'm going to pause right there and go back to the beginning of the broadcast when I said we currently have bond hearings 48 hours after arrest. there's something called probable cause, meaning there's a reasonable belief that you committed a crime, that a crime was committed, and that you were the one who did it. So in order for them to even detain you, state's attorneys had to have talked to witnesses, they had to have gathered information, or the police did on their behalf, I should say. And they have to be willing to present that and able to present that now. Nothing has changed. They're making it sound like, oh, we're not going to be able to get to run up against this clock, and now this person's going to be released. That is absolute trash. That is absolute BS, because that is the same freaking timeline that they have right now. That's number one. And two, speaking of timelines, there again is this myth that if you are charged with murder of 17 people and the state's attorney cannot take you to trial in 90 days, that you will be released. Well, I had to look this one up because I was like, what in the world are they talking about? Well, how about this one's been on the books at least since 1991. And all it means is that if you're held in custody, say for 90 days on a bond or a no bond hold, that after 90 days, you are entitled to a bond review. So the word bond will be removed, and we'll say detention hearing instead of bond hearing. So that hasn't changed either. Again, it's a scare tactic to make you think that the criminals are coming. I could substitute that for another word that we're all familiar with, that the criminals are coming, that they're coming to your block, that they're not only going to kick open Cook County jail's doors, they're going to kick open your doors. And that is not factual.
Is not. So as we said at the top of the broadcast, we are saying again, please not only click like and share, but share this and talk about it with either myself, with April. I've put up here our information. I put our information up here again. You can go to our website. You can also connect with us on social media. We are in all the places. April is Facebook, on JustUs Junkie, on Instagram and TikTok. And then myself, Legaleaze Please. I'm also on Facebook, on Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter. And so between the two of us, understand that we are two, but a few more of persons and sources of information where we want to see you thrive by the understanding of reliable and accessible legal information. Okay, so today is not going to be the only time we are going to come before you. We are going to pick a day in the next coming weeks where we are going to focus on some sections of the law so that you have a complete and comprehensive understanding of what is to come. Once we pick those days and those times, we will make sure that we will publicize it in the same way or similar way that we publicize this. But also, if you are here and you have any questions or comments, as you've seen, we've been posting it here on for all of us to be able to see. But if you would rather talk to us individually, you know all the ways where you can reach us. And we just, really want the best for you as it relates to accurate and accessible information. April, is there anything else that you wanted to address for today?
Yeah, I think that it's worth us saying that we're both educators. Like, we've had different paths. I mean, aside from having to honestly stand in front of a client and their family and educate them on the law and let them know what they're facing, we're literal educators. I've taught law school. I've taught college. Natasha's taught college. She's taught high school. I'm now teaching high school. So it's like we are literal educators. Yeah. We've taught other lawyers. So we're not coming out the woodwork. We're not new to this. We got almost 50 years legal experience between the two of us. And I think it's important for you to know what we're up to. So I have a curriculum that I take into schools called Street Law Revolution. And it teaches teens what their rights are when interacting with police. It teaches them how to avoid ever needing my legal services. It teaches them how to avoid the criminal justice system altogether. And Natasha has her own platform for adults. And so we have this wealth of information that you have access to. So if you want to learn more about the law, learn more about, then this hour program that we're doing for you, we have that available for you and for your child. And it doesn't have to be in those 60-second sound bites that Natasha mentioned to you. Like, we have entire curricula available to those who really want to learn more, know more. Why? Because your life can depend on this information. Unlike any other area of law, your life, not just your liberty or your livelihood, your physical life or death experience here on this side of heaven can depend on what Natasha and I are teaching you. So I implore you to find out more about us, to go to our various platforms, and to find out what we're up to.
And lastly, in addition to thanking you all for being here, remember, if you're coming in live or later, click like and click share. We would rather you be proactive in your education and pay, if at all, now as opposed to later. What do I mean? We would rather you interact with us as attorney Preyar and attorney Professor Robinson in peacetime as opposed to litigation time. Because when it comes to litigating, you're not going to get the nice, calm sit down where this, is that, because we show up completely different in a criminal courtroom. Okay. And we do not want to have you to engage in the trauma and the chaos and the burden of trying to meet with us in our professional ways in which we show up. We would rather have you, as April said, never come into the system. That's one of the biggest ways we can combust the system, is by not having people in it. Okay. One of the things that this law affects is monetary livelihood of people who benefit from your incarceration, from your oppression. So if you don't have cash bond or bail, that means that there are a myriad of stakeholders who now cannot benefit financially from you being incarcerated. That is what this legislation was created to do. So with that, I don't have anything else. April, do you have anything else you wanted to share?
No, that's all. So, this is overall, this is a great act that does a lot of great things. One thing it's already done is it has stopped police in the state of Illinois from lying to minors. If you can believe it, in all 50 states, it was perfectly legal to lie to a 15-year-old, a 4-year-old, a 6-year-old. It didn't matter. The goal was for the police to get you talking and get you to confess. So that already went into effect January 1st. And we are only one of 2 states. The other state is Oregon. The other thing is it's going to require body cams all up and down the state by 2025. Though that's something people take for granted if they live in Chicago, because we're used to seeing body cams. But if you live in a smaller suburb that can't afford it, they don't have body cams. And so these are all parts of this act. This act is amazingly comprehensive. And so Natasha and I are going to do a deep dive into various sections of it. And those are just 2 that we're making you aware of. So it is worth the read. It is worth you setting aside a couple minutes a day to read 7 pages of the act every day until you get through all 750. It's worth it because there's a lot of meat there and it's going to do a lot of good.
Yeah. So with that, thank you so much for those who are with us here live. For those who are going to be watching later, please make sure that you engage in this work with us by clicking like and sharing on your different platforms. On behalf of April and myself, Justice Junkie and Legaleaze, please, we thank you so much for taking some time to come on this side of the internet to hang out with us. We will see you in the time to come. Thank you so much for being here, and we will see you soon. Take care.
Have a great weekend.